Concordia, first of all, I want to say that the Labour Party is willing to cooperate in agreeing a joint motion and having a non-partisan, non-adversarial discussion of this report, the conclusions that arise from it, and the steps that need to be taken and the lessons that need to be learned from it. No amount of compensation will ever compensate the victims for what they have suffered. No motion of this House will ever undo the damage that was done. No word spoken here will ever take away the hurt that the victims are suffering. And as we saw last night, victims of this horrible abuse are living with the pain every day. I agree that we need to discuss this issue quickly, and I agree that we need to have conclusions reached quickly, both in the House and in discussions between government and the religious orders. And I believe that that is necessary because the dragging out and dragging on of the issue, I think, will contribute further to the pain that victims are suffering. But I think it would be a mistake if we did not ourselves, as a state, face up to some very painful things that I think the state itself has to face up to. Because the big question, I think, that this House has to ask itself, that government, that all of us who are in public life, I think, have to ask ourselves, is not just to address the horrific crimes that were committed against children, and not just to point the finger at those who committed the crimes, but to ask ourselves the question as to how it was allowed to happen. How it was allowed that when these children came forward, or their families, or people acting on their behalf, that nobody believed them, or nobody wanted to believe them, or nobody wanted to hear. Why department inspectors turned a blind eye. Why ministers and senior officials of government departments turned a blind eye and didn't hear. How Gardaí, who got to hear about it, or people in local communities, managed to turn a blind eye. And I think that a clue to that is to be found in recent comments that were made by your predecessor, Taoiseach, Deputy Bertie Ahern, and by the former Education Minister, Dr. Michael Woods. In the case of Deputy Ahern, who has accused those of us who are seeking a reopening of the 2002 deal as somehow being anti-clerical. And in the case of Dr. Woods, explaining why he didn't include the Attorney General in discussions because, as he put it, the legal people had fallen out with the religious. Therein lies a clue to why it was over decades that the blind eye was turned. There was an unhealthy, deferential relationship between this state and its institutions and the Catholic Church and its religious orders. And until we honestly, as a country, as a government and as a parliament, face up to that, face it down and determine that it is never going to happen again or be allowed to continue to happen again, then I think we will again be failing the victims of these awful crimes. Because the reason that the blind eye was turned, the reason that people wouldn't listen or didn't want to listen, was because of the danger of the belt of the crozier, or the denunciation, or the accusation of being anti-clerical, or of being out of step with what was the social consensus of that time. And I think that we have to, it's not enough for us to say this was awful, and let's move on from it, and let's put it back under the carpet again. It's not enough. We have to face and we have to deal with that unhealthy relationship which persisted for far too long in this state. And that is why, Taoiseach, the revisiting of the deal that was made in 2002 between Deputy Ahern's government and his Minister for Education at the time, Dr. Woods, and the religious orders needs to be revisited. Not because of the money. This isn't about the money. Or it's not about revenge, because revenge gets us nowhere. It's about justice. It's about restoring the balance. It's about ensuring that they don't get away with it, or that they didn't get away with it. And it's about ensuring that as a people that we have, and as a country that we have moved on from those horrific times where children could be abused behind closed doors, closed walls, and people knew about it and didn't do anything about it because they were afraid to do anything about it. So, Taoiseach, what I want to ask you is this, and I'm asking, this isn't, as I said, this isn't about, this is not politics. I'm asking you about the reopening of the deal. Are you going to talk to the religious orders about reopening the deal? And let's forget about the legalities of what agreement was made. Could we have, and I noticed that you did welcome, as indeed I do too, the statement this afternoon by the Christian Brothers. Could we have, for example, a fund established whereby the advice which was given by the Department of Finance at the time, that this would be done on a 50-50 basis, that could actually be done in a material way, and that a fund might be established which would be used in years to come to assist those who have suffered from the horrendous ordeal and abuse that they suffered over many decades. I believe it's not enough, and I will cooperate with whatever motion is brought forward. But I believe that the conclusion and closure of this will necessarily involve a revisiting of that 2002 deal, and in a practical way, seeing that there is a real and meaningful contribution made by the religious orders now, because I believe that that's what the people of the country want to see happening as well. Ken Corlick, could I ask the Taoiseach if he, perhaps with the Minister for Education, would call in the religious orders and discuss these matters with them? I do hear what he is saying about the imperative for the religious orders to make a bigger and a better contribution. I have heard over the course of the last number of days, and I welcome the comments that have been made by leading figures in the Catholic Church, including Cardinal Brady and the Archbishop of Dublin, Bishop of Down and Connor. But I also heard the very trenchant response from the religious orders to the effect that they do not wish to make a bigger contribution. And I hope that the statement by the Christian Brothers this evening is some change in that position. But in order to progress matters, I think that Taoiseach, you and Minister for Education, perhaps, since it was through that department that the deal was made, I think do need to meet with the religious orders as quickly as possible in order to progress that and to get the appropriate contribution from the religious orders to whatever fund is to be established. With regard to Deputy Woods, I'm delighted to hear from Deputy Woods on the issue. It is a pity that in 2002 that he didn't bring the indemnity deal before the House for approval. What he did do was he brought the Redress Act, redress bill before the House, which did enjoy cross-party support at that time as the appropriate way of dealing with it. But the indemnity deal, which apportioned the various liabilities and which capped the contribution of the religious orders, was never brought before this House. And I believe that some mechanism should be devised in the House which would give Deputy Woods ample opportunity to say what he has to say about that deal and how it was concluded, and who was present and who wasn't present, and what advices were provided. And if arising from that there is anything that I have to withdraw, then Deputy Woods or anybody else won't have to ask me to do so. But I think in the first instance we need to hear an awful lot more about what went on in the summer of 2002.